almost 20 to 10, and Mediawatch's Hayden Donnell has just entered the studio. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Emile.
You want to start with a bit of breaking-ish news, breaking adjacent news. TVNZ has announced an all-staff meeting tomorrow. What do we know about this?
Yeah, well, it's ominously about what the station is called the future of news. So that doesn't sound great, does it?
No.
And hopefully they will find out that there is still a future for news and that there's not no future for news. There's definitely job cuts on the cards. Tim Murphy of Newsroom said that popular shows like Sunday, Fair Go, their teams might be merged. We had RNZ Checkpoint positing that the 6 p.m. news might be cut down to half an hour. That would take us from 2 one-hour bulletins to 1 half-hour bulletin. That's a quarter. We've got a quarter of the broadcast news at 6 p.m. coming up, potentially. I haven't got that confirmed. Staff reportedly told that they're going to be in for a world of pain, and so this comes in the context.
You don't want to hear that.
This was a source of Tim Murphy.
Okay. Yeah.
They've been told. Then
it wasn't in the media release.
It's not a great message from your boss. It's not the one that you want to hear. This comes in the context of them announcing, of course, a $16 million or so operating loss last week. We've had significant cuts signalled since September. There's been a hiring freeze. Its chief executive has said that there are no sacred cows at the organisation. So this is all pretty well signalled, but it doesn't sound good.
Could a half-hour news bulletin be a good thing?
I kind of think that it'd be great if I kind of think that we should have a half-hour news bulletin in some ways.
An hour of news every day. It's a lot.
Half hour is a lot more common, probably.
It is around the world, yeah.
In America, they're shorter bulletins. I would quite like a half-hour bulletin, but I'd like 2 of them. I'd like Newshub still to be around. But hey,
yeah,
I'm with. And Mark Richardson said that actually. It was apparently his unpopular opinion that he told the Spin-Off recently.
What,
but I agree with you on this one, Mark.
All right, and while this big media news day, actually, because while this breaking news was happening, the broadcasting minister, Melissa Lee, at last decided to start doing broadcast media interviews.
What a day to start with it. What a day to start appearing in interviews. She's been criticised as being missing in action since Warner Brothers Discovery announced that Newshub was shutting down. She only did one interview with the Spin-Off, which seemed like maybe not a planned thing, but she talked to Duncan Grieve and then shut up shop for quite a long time. But today she came out and appeared on RNZ's Checkpoint and News Talk ZB. And it was in that latter interview that she had the news broken to her that TVNZ was looking at job cuts. And so here's how that went.
Hello, Heather.
What's the announcement from TVNZ tomorrow?
I have no idea.
They haven't given you a heads up?
I don't know if there's actually an announcement.
So TVNZ has told its newsroom staff that they will have an announcement tomorrow. And are you telling me they haven't told you, the minister, that announcement is happening?
I have had a conversation with TVNZ last Friday. Perhaps it is actually related to that, but I haven't actually caught up with any of the messages that have actually come through because I've had a busy day today, back-to-back meetings and everything.
Are they cutting newsroom staff?
That is for TVNZ to actually announce if that's what's happening, but I don't know.
Pretty awkward. Pretty awkward exchange there. Probably quite confronting. She's probably wishing a little bit that she didn't actually turn up for that interview. And just after the awkward interview that you just heard, you had TVNZ's Jack Tame coming in for a previously scheduled appearance on the chat slot called The Huddle, and he appeared to be in the dark as well.
I can see that I've chosen a good night to come on.
Jack, yes. So Jack.
This is you and me, Jack.
Yeah, Jack, have we got job losses tomorrow, have we?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I really don't know, other than to say that all I know is that our CEO has been pretty frank and open, I think, about the likelihood of some sorts of cuts and changes at TVNZ. I don't know if they're going to be in news. I don't know if it's going to be to programming. I don't know if it's going to be to both. But I think anyone who saw those half-yearly results last week, anyone who's seen Newshub's situation will appreciate that it's a perilous time for everyone in the TV business.
Jack, so
That was a pretty fluent response on the hop, to be fair.
Yeah, Jack Tame, he's a pro, and of course, if you don't know, he's the host of Q&A, which he is on Sunday morning at the same time as Mediawatch. So you should absolutely not be.
So nobody will be familiar
watching
with Jack Tame.
that. You should be tuning into RNZ instead.
In the wider context of this, Hayden, these potential cuts happening while Newshub's shutting down, of course, and there have been, comments from people in some quarters saying this is happening because these networks are skewing too left, they're too lefty, they're ignoring a big potential right-wing audience.
Too woke.
Yeah, go woke, go broke has been
Go woke, go broke. And I saw the blogger Robert McCulloch saying that about Newshub. He said it's being shut down because it was competing with a whole bunch of other left-wing outlets for a smallish left-wing audience, and it didn't go far enough into trying to cultivate this right-wing audience. And look, these arguments, that you can see that might make sense to some people. It strikes me as a little bit self-serving, to be honest, just saying that Newshub would have survived if it simply had aired all of my opinions. It also strikes me as a little inaccurate to think that it was simply catering to a left-wing audience. It was often quite harsh on left-wing politicians. I think, and I hope that you can contribute a little bit here too, Emile, if you agree, but the issues here are more structural, not if you don't agree, of course.
No, I was going to say, on that point, that 9 to Noon Politics this week was quite good. Was really good, as it always is. And Catherine Ryan made the observation when it comes to media that there are some stories that require a framing, and a framing that might be viably accused by someone in the audience of skewing too far in one ideological direction. But the vast majority of what the news media does not have that. It is people going into the important work that the news media does is people going into disaster zones to tell people what is happening. It's what's going on in the stock market, or job losses that are happening. These are not necessarily ideological things, and that maybe the ideological skew or otherwise of various editorial departments is overblown.
And the outlets that do just have a very blatant ideological skew, they're often not news gathering organisations. They're commentary organisations. It has lower overheads. It has it's cheap to produce. It doesn't have the same regulatory regime. It doesn't have the same legal costs involved in it. It doesn't have the same time involved in producing it. It's just straight off the top of the dome. And I just think, while you've got me going, I don't think it's a particularly helpful way of framing a news organisation in general, according to an ideological agenda. Your North Star, of course, there's no such thing as true objectivity. Everyone comes into everything with their own prejudices and biases. You're deciding what to prioritise in your news coverage, all that sort of stuff. But your guiding star, your North Star should be, what is the truth? I'm trying to tell the best and fairest version of the truth I can. And so I don't think that saying I'm going to be a right-wing or a left-wing outlet, that's necessarily a good decision for a news organisation. The fundamental problem for broadcast TV, though, it's not even any of this. It's that half their audience has gone to Netflix. It's gone to social media. These are mediums that are predicated on a mass audience plonking their butts in front of the TV at a particular time every night, and that's why you're charging $20,000 for a 30-second ad or something. And you can't do that when audiences have fragmented so much, and you have this high overhead, costly business.
That's one of the things, isn't it? Is that the technology involved in transmitting the news is old and very, very expensive compared to more modern techniques.
The people, the broadcasting fees, the Cordia fees, the
cameras cost tens of thousands,
the studios, the makeup, the everything. It's a costly way of producing the news in a market that doesn't reward costly news making, and this comes in the context of a wider global collapse in ad revenue, all that sort of stuff. Media everywhere is struggling. Broadcast news is probably the most expensive media out there, and it's kind of the first domino to fall. But the business model everywhere is being undercut. The business model everywhere is struggling, and it's not because they've skewed in one direction or the other necessarily. It's structural.
Solutions are both many and viable solutions may be hard to come by, but there was an interesting interview last week. Paula Penfold interviewing her former husband, Mike McRoberts.
Yeah, it wasn't that optimistic really, but he did say there would have been fixes for this if the government had only intervened several years ago.
It's very much the circumstances with which we find ourselves in, but those are circumstances that could have been addressed by government years ago, and I'm talking obviously about, Facebook and Google paying for our stories that they link to, and some of these streaming companies, putting money into local production.
I mean, we talked about the specific issues that are facing TV companies, but it's not just broadcast news companies, is it?
No, and that issue of social media companies, tech giants paying for news is obviously a vexed one. There's people proposing stuff like levies on their advertising money that they generate. There's the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill going through Parliament at the moment. There are probably flaws with that, but it's possibly the only scrap on the table for media at the moment. It's not just TV stuff right now. Now, it's laying off apparently 5 sports journalists in a proposal that will leave it with apparently no woman on its sports staff. And I find that interesting because David Farrier insinuated on his blog Webworm, I think a week or so ago, that stuff might be, or there's rumours of stuff going through financial difficulties, and its owner, Sinead Boucher, responded to that by saying, no, we're profitable, we're well positioned for the future. So even them in that position, they're going through restructures and layoffs. I saw that the Pandagraph Punch is shutting down today. You've got overseas outlets shutting down or laying off staff. So it's happening everywhere. It's not a good time for the media.
No, and indeed, Hayden, Mediawatch has been so preoccupied with the news media's inexorable march towards death's sweet embrace that it hasn't found time to talk about Christopher Luxon's housing supplement.
No, the big story of the week, the housing schmozzle, and just to recap, that was broken by Mark Dalder of Newsroom. He said Chris Luxon's taking $52,000 to live in his mortgage-free Wellington apartment. Luxon defended that, then realised it was becoming what he called a distraction, and that was by his account after listening to coverage on News Talk ZB.
Yeah. News Talk ZB changing the course of history.
Exactly. And Toby Manhire at the Spin-Off and Gone by Lunchtime, their podcast, he did the maths on this. He said Luxon defended it at 3:15, jumped in a car. He was disowning his decision that he'd just defended by 5 p.m. that day. So you got 1 hour, 45 minutes of coverage. What changed his mind? Toby couldn't identify it. I went back and listened to the coverage as well. And look, when Luxon got into the car, News Talk's coverage was focused on pigeon training. This is how it sounded.
We were a member of the Cornwall Racing Pigeon Club, which was sitting next to the railway lines when you go past Ascot Hospital and head into Green Lane there. Something took place there now. There used to be a pigeon club there.
Don't think that was it, Emile. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was what swayed him.
No.
Though it may have, I don't have evidence for this, it may have made him slightly more interested in pigeons.
Were there any more... Were there any more compelling examples that might have...
I did find evidence of something that may have been a little sort of fit the bill a little bit more a bit later on. And that was during Heather Duplessis Allen's show where she was reading out texts.
On the texts, we're getting a lot of texts. It feels to be it's split between 2 camps on Chris Luxon taking the money. One camp is Heather, who cares? The other camp is, oh my gosh, how bad is this? And there seem to be very few people who are like, no, it's totally fine. It's just I don't care about this, which is you're entitled to feel like that. It is a very minor political squabble. There's camps who are just, I don't want to have to deal with this nonsense. And then the camps who say things like this. Heather, Luxon comes across as short arms, long pockets. We are agreed, says Martin.
So that was Martin there. I think that Martin may have changed the course of history with that phrase, short arms, long pockets. It's either him or it's Heather Duplessis Allen talking to Barry Soper just before the 5 p.m. hour, because after that, Chris Luxon got on the phone to Heather Duplessis Allen, said, I'm paying back the money.
Now, I mean, this story came at a good time for potentially the Newshub gallery team, who are pretty, regarded for their cutting political commentary on stories of this veneer, would you say?
This is right up there, alley.
Yeah, right,
so it's really showing us what we're going to miss in 2 or 3 months' time, whatever happens at Newshub. They're a very unique political team. There's no one else like them, and I think that they have really covered this. They've really showing their skills off on this story. So I just want to play this. This is a nightmarish 1-2 punch of headlines for Chris Luxon from the 6 p.m. news.
Prime Minister makes a sudden U-turn on his $52,000 a year accommodation allowance.
Meanwhile, there's no more ACC-funded accommodation for a woman who has had half her body amputated.
Victims and families of the...
Bang, bang.
It
Holy
really
moly.
can't get worse than that.
Gee.
I don't want to laugh because that's not funny.
No,
but
it's not.
But it's
just,
also very bad.
Yeah.
And the Vision didn't make that one better. And look, Newshub they've prosecuted this case pretty strongly. That was followed by a story from Amelia Wade, who compared the $52,000 tax-free accommodation top-up that Luxon was receiving to what a single mother on the benefit makes after tax every year, which is $24,585. And her story included a surprisingly long supercut of Luxon saying he was entitled to his entitlement.
Really leaning on the fact he's simply entitled to it.
An entitlement. It's an entitlement that I have, and I'm just entitled to the entitlements that everyone else has. It's just an entitlement. They're part of an entitlement for an out of Wellington MP. It's an entitlement, and I'm well within the rules.
I mean, in terms of the wider coverage of this story, does he kind of have a point there in the sense that there was never any suggestion that rules were being broken here, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the entire, it's just the optics of it which are dreadful.
You saw Jenna Lynch making this point. I actually deleted a clip that I was going to play of it. It was the one that we deleted, Emile. It was Jenna Lynch standing there, and she was saying, look, this government has signalled that it is going to check on every single dollar that beneficiaries spend. It's going to cut money out of the public service. He said, we're not going to treat taxpayers like a bottomless ATM. And so it's the principle of doing that and holding one standard for public servants and poorer people in the country, and then giving the appearance of using taxpayers like a bottomless ATM in your own personal dealing. So that's why it's a story. But I do agree that sometimes the media does get a little bit hung up on small fry stuff, like staff Christmas parties at MB or something. You know, it's like, and it's chucking a few $1,000s for a turkey and some fish and a beer or two for staff. Isn't that silly? We do get, it's probably worth about a centimetre of motorway. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I think it's more the principle involved, so I don't really have a problem with it.
Finally, Hayden, we've got about 3 minutes left. You wanted to highlight some coverage of the Tate Prize from RNZ's Morning Report.
Yeah, this is Ingrid Hipkiss hearing Shepherd's Reign, one of the nominees.
That was not what I was expecting. Joining us now is Radio New Zealand music journalist and presenter of Saturday afternoon's Music 101 program, Charlotte Ryan. Kia ora. Hi there, Charlotte.
It's woken me up a little bit too.
Now, that was Charlotte and Ingrid, and later Corin came into the discussion. There was division in the team.
I do like the sound of Shepherd's Reign, I have to be honest. It was a pleasant surprise.
Really? Yeah, no, I'm not sure that it was quite my thing. Maybe Lord would have been more up my alleyway.
There's certainly a lot of new talent coming through, that's what I'd have to say.
I just want to say, Emile, that I am angry hearing this discussion. First of all, kudos to Corin.
Uh-huh. Corin shreds. Corin plays the guitar.
Corin, yeah, right. Okay,
I played in a band with Corin once.
That was you did?
Yeah, at the staff party. We had a staff band.
It wasn't
not a proper one.
Okay,
yeah.
I've been in a band too. We've all been in bands, Emile. If these guys had been diligently listening to Mediawatch on RNZ, popular and beloved show, they would have known that Shepherd's Reign had already been featured. They would have heard them already, because I went to see them at Māori Land in Otaki for the Mediawatch Hora Whenua special. And so here's some proof of that, actually. That's the 5-piece Polynesian metal band Shepherd's Rain playing at Māori Land.
Is that you?
That's me.
In the background?
That was my cousin Tim.
Right.
He's so into it. He's a really beautiful man. He dances and he headbangs a lot. That was him hoo-hooing. But there was a lot of hoo-hooing. It was a really special experience. I had to do an interview in the middle of it. But I'd say that if Ingrid didn't like that Shepherd's Rain recording, she needs to get along to a live show. Just head down to Otaki or something and see Shepherd's Rain in the flesh, because that's a real experience.
Just
I urge you to do it.
Just
like Mediawatch has.
I've got a text in saying nowhere near as good as Mess Hugger.
Okay, well, Meshuggah.
Meshuggah?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Not
okay.
Mess.
It looks like it's spelled M. It looks like.
Yeah, I think I'm not a big metal head myself, Emile, but I really did enjoy the Shepherd's Rain show.
What's your band called for
I had a folk band back in the day. I don't have one anymore. My wife.
Is it on Spotify?
It was me and my wife, and she left the band. It was called Great North.
Great North.